this year marks 33 years, interestingly, 33 years, Lamed Gimel is a special number, marks 33 years since the first Siyum Harambam. The Rebbe initiated the daily learning of Rambam on Achim Shel Pesach Tovshin Mem Dalet. It's 34 years ago. And the way it worked out was that the first Siyum was on Dalet Nissan, Tovshin Mem Hey, 33 years ago. And so being that we just finished a sefer of the Rambam, we started a new sefer, and interestingly that this sefer is the sefer of Karbonis, which is Korban Pesach. We are Mamish Erev Pesach, so I'll ask Rabbi Johnson to make the seal and our scholar.
Final halacha the Rambam is talking about cooking in Torah, and we have to use our mind, we have to use our own understanding to come to understand Soif in Yonam, to understand the mitzvah as much as we are capable in understanding. And even if it's something which we cannot find a time, find a reason, or an ilah, nonetheless, it should not be something which is small in our eyes, and it's something that we should try to use. It's a very, very long halacha. So just say the conclusion. It says that David HaMelech was greatly mitztayer on the Minyam and the Goyim who would come and they would make kindness on the Chukim of Torah. And they would come and they would pursue him and harass him with tshuvos of sheker that they would come up with according to their limited understanding, koytadas Adam. But as much as they would do this, it only caused him to be moisiv in his dveikus to Torah. As it says in the pasuk, Taflo alai sheker zaydim, that the zaydim come and they throw these falsities at me. He says, Ani b'cholev eto b'kudecha, but nonetheless I, with all my heart, will wrap up your laws. And it says there concerning, it says, Kol mitzvaysecha emunah, all of your mitzvahs are faithful, are true. Sheker dafuni azmeni, and have been pursued by falseness from those who come and mock at the mitzvahs which are beyond seichel. And then the Rambam concludes, and which is relevant to the Sefer Avodah, which discusses the Karbonis. Kol ha-Karbonis kulan, all of the Karbonis of the Torah, mechlal ha-chukim heim, they are all laws which are classified as chukim. Lefichach, and therefore amru chachamim, she'aval avodas ha-Karbonis ha'olam oimed, that the entire world stands on the fulfillment of the Karbonis. It depends on the fulfillment of the Karbonis. She'ba'asiyas ha-chukim ba'mishpatim, that it is through the fulfillment of the chukim and the mishpatim of Torah, Zoichin ha-yisharim l'chaya olam haba, those who are upright and following the ways of Torah, zoichet l'chaya olam haba. V'ktiva Torah tzivuyeh ala chukim, and the Torah begins first by stressing the commands which are chukim. Shenemar, as it says, u'shmartem es chukoisai ves mishpatai asher yasa oisam ha'adam v'chai b'hem. You should keep my chukim that comes first, as well as my mishpatim that a person should do and should live through them. Brief Rahman Messiah, Nigma Sefer Shminim Be'ezra Shakai, Minyan Prokim shall say Be'ezra Chamisha B'tishim Hilchot Be'ez HaBechirish Shmei Prokim Hilchot Be'ez Mikdash Asal Prokim Hilchot Be'ez Mikdash Tishim Prokim Hilchot Sesereviyah Shiv Prokim Hilchot Ma'isa Prokim Tishim Asal Prokim Hilchot Tvin Lusafim Asal Prokim Hilchot Psulim Mitzvashim Tisha Asal Prokim Hilchot Avedis Yom HaKippurim Chamisha Prokim Hilchot Me'il Shmei Prokim. In the beginning, the Sefer HaKarbonis Tikvan Filosik Tois Vanechem Asis Kappa and Nilchas Alef. So the beginning of Hilchos Karbonis, the Sefer HaKarbonis begins with Hilchos Korban Pesach. There's a mitzvah asay, says the Rambam, to shech the Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nissan after midday. And the Korban Pesach is only shechted either from the sheep or from goats, and it has to be a Zachar ben Shana, it has to be male within the first year. And both men and women are obligated in this mitzvah of Korban Pesach. And someone who is mevatel the mitzvah of Korban Pesach intentionally, bezolim, and the day of the 14th of Nissan passes and he did not bring the Korban Pesach, and he was not exempt because he was neither Tomei or B'derech B'choika, so he is Chayev Kares, and if he was mevatel the mitzvah of Korban Pesach B'shkaga, then he is Potter.
many know that the Rebbe mentioned it many times. We're now celebrating, of course, the Rebbe's birthday. And the Rebbe spoke many times with the fact that we know that the Rambam's birthday is on Erev Pesach, on Yudalad Nissan. And interesting to note, the Yeshivah Shule is we know that the Rambam, the Sifrei HaRambam, all add up to 14. There are Yudalad Sifrei Rambam, 14 Sfarim of the Rambam. The day of Erev Pesach, we know, is the day when we destroy the Chometz, the mitzvah of Tashbisu. And there's a Tikunei Zohar, which is brought down in a minor of the Rebbe Rashab, probably brought down in many other places too, that this power to be able to destroy the Chometz, the Ruchni, the spiritual Chometz, which is the Klippa of Amalek, and all that's associated with it. So it's a special koyach comes. The Nimshach is drawn down from heaven on this day, as it says at the end of Parshas B'Shalach that Hashem swears and makes a shvuah, Ki yod al keis yud kei kol v'chom al Hashem b'Amalek v'doy v'doy. And it says that Hashem raises his hand and shvuah yod is yud daled. So the Tikunei Zohar says that Ki yod, that on the day of yud daled, we have the very special power to be mavayed, to be mashbis, to destroy the Chometz. The Rebbe Rashab goes on to explain that when we eat the Kezayis matzah on the first night of Pesach, and matzah is mechlod and mehenusa, it's the food of faith that Mamish gives us faith and strengthens our faith, poil Mamish by eating the matzah, and that destroys Amalek. Amalek is the antithesis, etc. But I remember it was that time at the first Siyum HaRambam with Alef Nissan Tovshin Mem Hey. As you remember, we made a big gathering in the Yeshivah Shule hall. The father of Hashem mentioned from a letter found in Hatomim, I think from the Geniza HaChelsonis, a letter from the Baal Shem Tov to the Maggid, saying that he should learn the Rambam, and through learning Rambam, mevarim es kol hachitzonim, thereby you destroy all the extraneous, all the opposing forces through learning Rambam. So it's interesting to know the Rambam was born on Yud Dalet, and these Yud Dalet Sfarim of the Rambam, the day when we're given a special koyach to do mevarim hachitzonim, and alachas kama v'kama, and the Rebbe Nasi Bereinu instituted the Limud HaRambam, that we're doing it because this is the Takon of the Rebbe, so all the great achievements that we can achieve with the Limud HaRambam. So it's an appropriate time in Yudalach Nissan to be mechazik oneself and one's discussions to the Rebbe, and particularly in the Takonis. It's not easy to learn 3 Prokim of Rambam a day, whatever, to learn Rambam, so we should be mechazik ourselves into Takonis of Limud HaRambam, be mechazik one another, and we should be zeicher that before, that on this day, Yudalach Nissan, we should be celebrated with the Rebbe and with the Rambam in Shalayim Bir HaKodesh. I'd like to call upon the Rabbi Nachum Mendel Lipsker, who should be in the assistant to say a few words. Fine.
Yom Tov. Tovshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe Shnas HaTishim then, Yudalach Nissan. Remember, there was a very, very big, huge tank parade. It's quite as big as the one we're having here tomorrow. Then we should definitely be mishkatet from the Tzoyim of the parade. But it was a big tank parade, and there was a lot of publicity then in the newspapers and the magazines and so on. There was a very big shturim going on, about Lubavitch, about the Rebbe, about the Mefzoim, and so on. And remember, this is a short while after Chav Zayin Adar Alef, after the Rebbe had the stroke, and what you might call the very, very strong Mashiach buzz was very, very, very strong on the agenda b'chlal. On the one hand, the Rebbe is not well, the Gashmias. On the other hand, everything the Chassidim are saying about the Rebbe. And here there's this big parade, drawing a lot of attention. So I remember then, as Bachrim, people were making different copies of this newspaper article, this magazine, and so on. And in one particular big American magazine, which shall remain nameless right now because of, I think, the Kedusha of this Farbrengen and the Yom Tov, we're not going to start speaking about all these different places and things, but there's just one particular quote that stuck very, very strong in my mind. And what it said over there was, speaking again about the Rebbe, what Chassidim are saying, and so on, and bringing other opinions from other places, which is in ganze nicht nageya. But there was the following paragraph that went something along these lines. If in fact the Rebbe is Mashiach, then he's going to be very, very busy in the near future. He's going to have to be building the temple in Jerusalem. He's going to have to be bringing all the Jews to Israel. He's going to have to bring about world peace. And he's going to have to usher in the resurrection of the dead. That's what it said. Now, why it's so much stuck in my mind was because very, very often, we speak about Mashiach and Geula and all the inyanim to do with the Rebbe and all of that. And it was Davkin of Goyisha magazine that brought it down, Mamish, in Meise Bepoil, in Uizgetaish. Mamish translated it in some very, very, Gashmiistic things that are going to need to take place. Now the Rebbe is going to be busy with all of these inyanim. But the reason I'm mentioning this right now is because we often focus on various different bu'ulis of the Rebbe and inyanim of the Rebbe. And what I actually want to focus on right now is this aspect of the resurrection of the dead, the inyan of Tchias HaMesim. And how the inyan of Tchias HaMesim is not only something connected to something that starts happening once the Geula comes, and once we have the Isgalus of Mashiach, but I would like to suggest, based on a letter of the Rebbe which I'm about to quote, is that the Avodah of Tchias HaMesim, the inyan of Tchias HaMesim, is something that the Rebbe started working on right from the beginning of the Nesius and way before that. Which the truth of the matter is that in addition then to just understanding a little bit about the Rebbe's Avodah B'chlal and in the context of Mashiach, I think it also has a very strong relevance to Yud Alef Nissan. We speak about Yud Alef Nissan being the birth of the Rebbe, the day the Rebbe got his life, Begashmias. But based on what I would like to discuss right now, I think we could also say that in a very, very down-to-earth way, this is the day that the Rebbe brings life into the whole world in the idea of Tchias HaMesim, and again, not only once the Geula comes, but throughout the Rebbe's Nesius. But before getting to this particular letter, just in order to understand the letter a little bit better, and also in the context again of Pesach and Zman Cheruseinu, and another letter of the Rebbe that's directly Yud Alef Nissan letter, so which will also help us understand this other letter. The Rebbe, as we know, would write Michtovim Kloliyim. The Rebbe would write a Michtav Kloli before Yom Tovim, and one of the times that the Rebbe would write a Michtav to all of Klal Yisrael was on Yud Alef Nissan. The Rebbe would b'derech klal write a letter in honor of Pesach with a message for Pesach and so on. Which derech agav, just parenthetically speaking, is that we know that the Rebbe is the Nosi, the Roish B'nai Yisrael, the Oifen Golui, as the Rebbe puts it in the Yad Tetzav, the Rai Nehem Golui of all of Klal Yisrael. One of the areas where we see this on a very regular basis, in a very revealed way, more than anyone else, both in previous generations, even by the Rabbeim, and if you want to compare to other great people and so on, is in the Rebbe's Mechtovim Kloli. When the Rebbe starts every Mechtov Kloli, several times a year, El B'nei U'B'nois Yisrael, B'chol Mokoi Shehein, Hashem Aleim Yichud. The Rebbe addresses every single Yid. Where else do you have such a thing? Addressing every single Yid. I think the only other time you have it is in the few times in the Torah where it says, Daber El Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael. Certain parshas it says where all of Klal Yisrael is there. The Rebbe addresses every single Yid. In a letter, and I'm mentioning this specifically because it also has a round number going back exactly 60 years ago, in the letter of the Rebbe of Alef Nissan, going into Pesach of Tavshin Yud Ches, the Rebbe explains in a very fascinating way the inyan of Zman Cheruseinu, of what does real Geula mean, what does it really mean to go out of Hakbolos, what does it really mean to go out of our constraints. And the Rebbe gives the following analogy. The Rebbe uses the dogma of Tzoymeach, Chai, and Medaber, and then of a Yid. And what the Rebbe says is that in order for a Tzoymeach, in order for a plant to be able to have its full freedom, to be able to have its full life, to be able to feel fully fulfilled, being able to do what it needs to do on earth, as long as the plant has all of the soil it needs, has the water it needs, has the sunshine, the oxygen, whatever it needs, even though technically this plant is standing in one place for the duration of its whole life, but as long as it has these above-mentioned necessities, the Tzoymeach is a happy plant, thriving, free, alive. That's all it needs. Says the Rebbe, take an animal, a chai, and give it the exact same conditions. It can have its food, it can have its oxygen, its air, whatever else it needs, those sorts of needs. However, you're going to tell the animal, but you must stay in this spot your whole life. So the Rebbe says we can understand that because this is not fitting with the character and the essence of what this animal is meant to be, where it wants to just run around and be free and so on. So even though it's being supplied with its food and those necessities, it would be considered in the greatest imprisonment that's only possible. It feels tied, it feels locked up, it feels like your mama's killing it. Obviously, it needs to be able to get around. Then the Rebbe says, now let's take that a step further to the medaber, to the human being. If we allow the human being to have all of his food that he needs, all of the gashmiistic necessities, like the tzoymeach, like the plant, if we then take it a step further and we even let the person roam around and go around similar to the freedom of the animal, but if we don't allow the person to exercise what he is all about, the essence of what a human being is all about, which is the inyan of seichel, if he cannot exercise his koyach of seichel, of intellect, then once again he is going to feel terribly imprisoned. He's going to feel almost like a dead person. And the Rebbe takes it a step further. And the Rebbe says, even if you're going to allow the person to use some of his seichel, but you are going to restrict it, that he has to always remain on the level of a little child seichel, so he always has to somehow fit into the level of kindergarten or something like that. So once again, clearly this person is going to feel terribly imprisoned and not really have the life that he's supposed to have. And if all of this is true, the Rebbe concludes, regarding any human being, so once we get to our nefesh elikis, once we get to the neshama of a yid, it goes way, way, way beyond that. That a yid's neshama, being a chelek elikami mal mamash, the only way it could truly feel emes acherus, real freedom, is only if it could constantly be going higher and higher, soaring, going higher and higher every single day, getting closer to the Ein Sof. And if even it had yesterday's avodah done properly, but because we're dealing with Ein Sof, if the neshama cannot keep on moving higher and climbing this ladder, then it's not going to be cherus, it's not going to feel free, although technically, what do you want? I have my food, I have my sleep, I have my oxygen, I can run around, I can even use my seichel, but if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to as a yid, then I'm limited, I don't have that cherus. So we understand, coming to Zman Cherus Seichel, why real cherus, of course, comes with Torah and mitzvahs and constant growth in our tshuka, in our wanting of our connection to a likus, to the Eibishter. In a letter of the Rebbe, going back to the beginning of Tafshin Hey. So this is 1944. Whereas we'll see in a minute, the Rebbe speaks a similar sort of idea, but I'm going to go back now to the concept of Tchias HaMesim. The Rebbe's father, Reb Levi Yitzchak, as we know, passed away Chaf of Tafshin Daled, 1944. A short while later, the Rebbe got a letter from a very, very famous chassid, Rabbi Greenglass. Now remember, this is still even before the Rebbe's deceased. The Rebbe is still, this is during the lifetime of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe gets a letter from Rabbi Greenglass, wishing him Nichum Avelim, Aleinu, and so on. The Rebbe is wishing the Rebbe the comfort, and so on. And what he writes in his letter, is, the Rebbe, as we know, was already involved in the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of America's Linyonei Chinuch, and Machanei Yisrael, etc., and spreading Chassidus. So what Rabbi Greenglass writes to the Rebbe is that we should be Zoicha already, of course, to the time of Tchias HaMesim, and so on. And then he says to the Rebbe, especially since this is what your work is all about, as we know this is what Chassidus is all about, is to be Mechayet, to bring life into those that don't have Chassidus yet, etc. The Rebbe writes back to him a letter with thanking and some other words connected to his letter. And then, as a postscript to the whole letter, the Rebbe says to him that the idea that you wrote about Tchias HaMesim needs to be developed further and in an orderly fashion. And then the Rebbe goes on for another page, a page and a half, doing exactly that. And here is the amazing thing what the Rebbe does, and I'll go through in detail in a minute. What the Rebbe goes ahead and shows is that all of his avodah, and again remember, the Rebbe is always that greatest chassid of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Rebbe is never speaking about himself. It's always about the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of course. But we know that the Frierdiker Rebbe charged the Rebbe over a number of organizations, to run a few organizations, and that's the way the Rebbe saw himself, the Rebbe doing the avodah for the Frierdiker Rebbe in these few organizations, 4 of them to be exact, as we'll go through in a minute. And the Rebbe goes ahead and shows how each one of these organizations, or let's call it each one of the avodos that the Rebbe is involved in, back then, before the Nesius, and once the Nesius started, none of this went down. It only increased, of course. And you can also see it's still connected with these ideas. The Rebbe explains how each one of his avodos is about Tchias HaMesim. And Tchias HaMesim on 4 different levels. 4 different kinds of Tchias HaMesim. And this is what the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says each and every one of us consists of 4 parts. We each have a nefesh elikis, a godly soul, a chelik elikami ma'al mamash. We have also, Chassidus discusses, we have something called a nefesh hasichlis, an intellectual soul, which we're not going to go in right now over here into all these different dargos, but Chassidus discusses an intellectual soul, a nefesh hasichlis. Then we have a nefesh habahamis, we're a little bit more familiar with. We have a nefesh habahamis. And finally, we have our gashmi yazdike guf. Says the Rebbe, famous thing that's quoted many times in Chassidus, man de nofil midarge ikrimis, one who falls down from his level, he's not at the highest level that he can be, is called mace, is called dead. The Rebbe says, if the nefesh Elokis, the godly soul, is not striving, is not working to go higher and higher in its yearning, in its desire, in its connection to Elikus, although it may be doing a lot of good things or right things, but if it's not striving to do its utmost and its best, climbing higher and higher, then ikre mis, and that's considered dead for the nefesh Elokis. The Rebbe says the nefesh hasichlis, our intellect. Our intellect, we're not speaking about our nefesh habahamis yet. Our intellect, our seichel, is supposed to be controlling our taivas, is supposed to be controlling our physical temptations, even to permissible things. But it's supposed to be controlling. We're supposed to have our mind ruling over our hearts. A person should know better. A person should be using his seichel for higher pursuits. If the seichel is not doing that, if he's not fully in control and being able to contain those tightness, those temptations and all of that, once again, what is he called? He's called mace. Nafil Medarge, he had fallen down from his level and he is considered dead. What about the nefesh habahamis? The nefesh habahamis is a behemoth. The nefesh habahamis is running around like an animal who wants to eat, who wants to drink and so on. So that's pretty normal for it. But what's normal for the nefesh habahamis is devarim hamutarim, is as long as it's permissible things. Now, if it tells us in Tanya, even the nefesh habahamis, shayim yudoim, even the nefesh habahamis of a yid is still interested in permissible things. If chas v'shalom it falls down to devarim ha'asurim, then that's its miso. Nafil medarge ikre mis. And finally, of course, we have the guf, and that's the one that we don't need much translation for, that when the guf loses its connection with the neshama, the Rahman Mitzlan, then it's a mace in the most literal sense. The Rebbe was given by the Friedrich Rebbe 4 different things that the Rebbe was involved in. We all know the Rebbe was in charge of kahos, of publishing Sforim, Be'ikah Chassidus Sforim, of course. The Rebbe was in charge of an organization called Machane Yisrael, an organization called Merkez L'Inyonei Chinuch, and the last, I'm not sure how, is the most, unfortunately, the most famous organization around the world. I don't know how many people know that the Rebbe was in charge of this one too, which was the Chevra Kadisha. The Rebbe was the Nossi, or the head of the Chevra Kadisha as well, also back to the Friedrich Rebbe requesting that as well. Just briefly, I mean, 2 of these didn't need, I don't think need much explanation. The publishing of the Sfarim doesn't need much explanation, as doesn't the Chevra Kadisha. But just briefly about Machane Yisrael and Merkez L'Inyonei Chinuch, for those that are unfamiliar with the details exactly. First of all, in the back of Hayoim Yoim, well, at least in the original Hayoim Yoim, today with all the different ones that come out, I'm not sure it still makes it in there. In the back of the Sefer Hayoim Yoim, it actually has a full-page description on each of these organizations that the Friedrich Rebbe established as soon as the Rebbe came to America, and the Friedrich Rebbe put the Rebbe in charge over those organizations, Machane Yisrael and Merkez L'Inyonei Chinuch. Machane Yisrael was basically about spreading Yiddishkeit, what we would today call really Mivtzoyim. If you want to put it in a nutshell, that's what Machane Yisrael is about. It was about spreading Yiddishkeit. The second paragraph actually in the whole thing was to publicize ha'emes ha'gmura, the absolute truth, that li'alto l'tshuva, la'alto l'geula, that immediately do tshuva, immediately the geula is going to come. But in essence, that's what Machane Yisrael was about, publicizing the Mashiach is coming, but the idea of Mivtzoyim really, being Makarev Yidden to Yiddishkeit. Merkez L'Inyonei Chinuch, as its name implies, you don't need much explanation there either. Things like Mesiv Shabbos, establishing schools, education in public schools, and all of these sorts of inyonim was the idea of Merkez L'Inyonei Chinuch. Says the Rebbe like this. Let's go back to the 4 levels. Says the Rebbe like this. I'm saying it in the backwards order now. I'm just going to start from the bottom to the top. Says the Rebbe like this. When you have a person that's chas v'shalom, the neshama left the body in the most literal sense, of course, that's when the Chevra Kadishim come into the story. But we all understand that by Yidden, it's not just a technical thing. Chevra Kadisha is obviously dealing with the body, considered a holy body, the body of a Yid. It's preparing the body so that he should be able to be ready and prepared for Tchias HaMesim. So Chevra Kadisha is definitely preparing and doing the inyanim that are necessary right now for Tchias HaMesim. That's as far as the Guf is concerned. We had the Nefesh HaBahamis. What's the Nefesh HaBahamis? The Nefesh HaBahamis, we said, what's its Misa? When instead of just being involved in the Taivos and the Dvarim HaMutarim and permissible things, it had fallen down in Dvarim HaAsurim. It had fallen down into Goyishkeit. Says the Rebbe, what needs to be done? This Yid now needs to be brought back in to Machane Yisrael. He needs to be brought back into the Jewish camp. He needs to, what we call again, the idea of shlichus, the idea of bringing Yidden back to Yiddishkeit, in the most simple sense of the word. What about our Nefesh HaSichlis? When our Nefesh HaSichlis has fallen down and allowed a person to get involved in taivos, even a permissible thing, just acting like an animal, he lost his GPS, the way he's supposed to be going with his seichel, that's supposed to be guiding and supposed to be training the person how to go. What does he need? He needs Merkaz Le'Inyonei Chinuch. He needs to be educated once again. We need to take out the books. We need to educate. We need to teach. We need to elevate the person, Pasha, to have a proper chinuch. And finally, of course, the Nefesh Eloikis, with all of its great mileage, even if he's doing all of the right things all of the time. But once again, if he is not standing with this tremendous rotzu, with this tremendous desire, wanting to get closer and closer and closer to Hashem, like I said before, every day going higher, every day trying to get closer to the Eibishter, there's only one solution for that, and that's the avodah of kahas, that's the avodah of chassidus, of publishing chassidus, of maimorim, of learning chassidus, and bringing that this person too, that's a fine from Yid. He's doing Torah and mitzvahs. But he sort of doesn't have that idea that I need to constantly have this passion, this rotzui, to become one with Hashem. That's where Chassidus comes into the picture, to help this person to realize it's a constant journey, and he always needs to have this inyan of rotzui. Once again, just to go back to the beginning, just to recap or to tie it all together. In very, very simple words, the Rebbe, even before the beginning of the Nesius, is telling us that his avodah is one thing. His avodah is to bring a chayis into Klal Yisrael. His avodah is to bring Tchias HaMesim to every single part of the Yid himself and to every single kind of Yid. So when we're speaking on a day of Yud Alef Nissan, it's one thing to say, yes, the Rebbe's neshama came down, and the Rebbe himself came to life, so to speak. But there is also this idea that every part of the Rebbe's avodah is about Tchias HaMesim, about bringing us life, being machaya every part of us. And as the Rebbe emphasized in many, many, many places, that what does chayis mean? Chayis is only, the sign of life is only when we're growing. Only when we're going higher and higher, as in all of these previous examples. The moment you stop or start going lower, it's not chayrus, and chas v'sholem maybe even the opposite of chayim. So the Eibishter will help him. And after all of the avodah that the Rebbe is definitely being machayim mesim us for so many years, we should finally have the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima, when the Rebbe will bring about V'Akitzu V'Ranu Shoichne Yofer Tchias HaMesim in the most literal sense. We'll have the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima, and we'll all be Zoichet, V'Noichel Shom and Azvachim and Apsochim, have the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima with the Rebbe take it from Yad Mamash.
Because we're very expensive.
I walked around, I saw it. I was watching it at home. And then I decided to come and just take my kids there. No, because I walked past it. I didn't see it. No, I came to like you see my head. No, like 5 minutes ago. No, not the whole world. I was watching it. Maybe I was just watching it. I know all those people were from our family. No, people watching it live stream. They watch it when it's an easy video. It's not like happening now that they're filming. And they can't go back.
Y'all see, hello. That one is live.
Everyone's watching. I mean, I just want to. They can hear us. Echo.
Chaim, happy birthday, Yontov. Wow, the Rebbe says by the birthday of a Nasi Yisrael, by the birthday of a leader of a Rei Yisrael, who includes and incorporates, who has within him the souls of every single Yid, is a very, very special time. Because we know that the birthday, Mazol Greiver, the Mazel, your spiritual strength is powerful, and when a person's born and incorporates within themselves, they have within them all of that which they're going to achieve throughout their life, comes and shines on the day of their birth. Like by Moshe Rabbeinu says, and the house was filled with light. There was some special aura that was present because when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, whatever he's going to achieve came to the fore at that point in time. And the same thing happens on the birthday every single year, that it shines all the Giluim that the Rebbe do, that Nasi is going to do. And for sure, when we're talking about our Nasi, and we're talking about our Rayman, and we're talking about our Yechidah Polis, our Neshama Polis, who incorporates our Neshamas, we're talking about the fact that today is being Begolid, being Goiver, all the Inyanim that the Rebbe is going to achieve within us, all that we are going to achieve, comes out stronger, and therefore we have to utilize the day today, and we have to think about ourselves. As the Rebbe writes in Agim Yoim of Alef Nissan, that a birthday is a time to be mispointed, a birthday is a time to think about your avodah, to think about what can be improved, and to think about how to get higher. So it's both in a personal level for us, and in fact it's even higher than our regular birthdays. Our regular birthday is only a processing individual thing of one certain small detail, the one prat, the one detail in the bigger picture. But here we're talking about the way each and every one of us are incorporated, included, and part of the entire Klal Yisrael, the corpus of Yidden. So our birthdays on an even higher level, so we have to utilize the day on a much higher level to strengthen our avodah. And the same thing goes when it comes to a birthday of a loved one. For anyone who has somebody very close and is coming up a birthday, especially if it's a significant birthday, it's a special birthday, you start thinking about it in advance. What can I tell you? I have a very significant birthday in my family now. And you know, we didn't start thinking about it tonight. A couple of birthdays in my family actually significant. We started thinking about it a long time ago. Why? Because it's a special birthday, it's a birthday of the person. You want to show your love, you want to show your respect, you want to show your feelings towards the person. You think about them, when it comes their birthday, you want to give them something. And Koshkin, again, when it comes to the Rebbe, a Chassid's feeling of love to the Rebbe, that he wants to go and he wants to give something, and he thinks about what he can do to give to the Rebbe. But in the earlier years, it wasn't so, before some wasn't so publicized, it wasn't necessarily public knowledge exactly when the Rebbe's birthday was. They'd already found out in Tafshin Zayin, when the Rebbe went to pick up his mother in France, and the Rebbe's mother, they found out from the Rebbe's mother at the time what date the Rebbe's birthday was. But there was a couple of people, it wasn't a public, well-known thing. And the Rebbe, the first time the Rebbe did anything that might show when his birthday was Tafshin Gudbeis, 1952, on Yonah this, and the Rebbe said a Maimer, Adnai Sosei Tiftach, for his 50th Shnas HaChamishim, his 50 years, he said a Maimer in his room. But again, even then it was to a small crowd of, a million or so Hasidim, the important city. It wasn't a public thing. The first real public publicity about the Rebbe's birthday was for the Shnas HaShishim, his 60th birthday. In Tafshin Chof Beis, 1962. And at that time, before Yud Nissan Tzach, we're thinking about it's coming up to the Rebbe's birthday. How could we not, go do something special and give the Rebbe nachas, give the Rebbe something for his special birthday, 60 years. And of course, it's never been celebrated in such a way, it's never been publicized in such a way. They weren't so sure. They didn't know if it would receive the approval of the Rebbe. They decided, at any rate, that they're going to go ahead, and they put out. They used to have a Malkus. Malkus that would say what they were doing during the week, and they publicized. They announced that at one of the Malkus that they're going to now start making a campaign for the Rebbe's birthday of giving the Rebbe birthday presents to Nisper Shishim in the number of 60. So 60 things in terms of learning, 60 in terms of stocker, 60 in terms of whatever it is, that this is what they're going to collect. And they want people to send in their haflotzes to Tzach and send in their money in sums of 60 to Tzach and B'meilor, and after this, and they're going to present it to the Rebbe. And that was what they announced. Where did they first get the inkling that the Rebbe had accepted their proposal of what they were doing to give the Rebbe a present? So when people were sending in their letters to Tzach, sending their letters, either their money or their haflotzes of what they were doing, some people sent it to 770 and it ended up on the Rebbe's desk. And the Rebbe wrote on the envelopes when they came to his desk, Shayach Tzach. This is for Tzach. And they realized that the Rebbe was, handing it over to Tzach. In other words, he was approving that it should be given over to Tzach, these letters. But that would happen a couple of times. But then one time, the Rebbe got a letter on his desk, and it had money in it that was going towards this campaign. The Rebbe wrote, I don't remember what it was called, but Shayach, instead of writing Tzach, the Rebbe wrote Shayach, I think it was Karen Hashishim, whatever the exact expression was, Shayach to the fund that's 60 years. So here they went wild. Here the Rebbe was already officially putting a name that there's a Karen, there's a fund for the 60-year fund. The Rebbe approved it, and that was it. And that year the Rebbe Farbrengen for the first time publicly, Tafshin Chof Beis, the Rebbe Farbrengen on Yonah Nissan for the first time. And it wasn't until 9 years later the Rebbe continues started Farbrengen on a yearly basis. What do we see already? The feeling of the Chassidim, that they want to give the Rebbe something. They want to give the Rebbe a birthday present. They feel that the Rebbe's special. They feel the love to the Rebbe. They want to give the Rebbe something. The Rebbe is unser Tata. It's our Tata's birthday. We want to give the Rebbe something. And in fact, in the letter of the Friedrich Rebbe, where the Friedrich Rebbe writes, speaks about these kashrus and tzidkim to the Rebbein. And the Friedrich Rebbe adds over there and he writes, and the love that the Tziddim felt, that they would arouse themselves and feel about themselves, their love to the Rebbe Poshut. A feeling, not only is the Rebbe my Nasi, and the Rebbe is the place to turn to questions, and the Rebbe is the one that we want to do whatever he says. He's our commander. But Poshut, the feeling that the Rebbe is my father, the Rebbe is somebody I love, and I want to connect with the Rebbe, and therefore it comes his birthday, I want to give him a present. There was well-known individual, Mr. David Chase, the head of Chase Banks, who was carved through Bible, was carved through Rabbi Herson in New Jersey, and he became the head of Machane Yisrael's development fund. The head of the, he was a fairly wealthy person, obviously, and he had a very close and intimate connection with the Rebbe. And he decided that he wanted to give the Rebbe a birthday present. He wasn't a chassid who was brought up as a, from birth in the Chassidim. He was brought by Rabbi Herson. He developed a relationship with Rebbe. He had that feeling, he had inspiration. He had such a connection to the Rebbe. He had a feeling connected to the Rebbe. He says, "I've got to give the Rebbe a birthday present. It's a special day. It's a special time, and therefore it's coming. I've got to develop my connection to the Rebbe. I have to feel and experience the Rebbe. I want to give the Rebbe something. Rebbe, what can I give you as a birthday present?" And the Rebbe a couple of different times spoke about what birthday presents we can give him. We can mention some of the things. I think over there he spoke to Mr. Chase about putting on film, if I'm not mistaken, that he wasn't putting on film, but he should put on film every day. That was the birthday present he requested from David Chase. There were other times that Rebbe spoke by Farbrengen. The Rebbe says, although we don't usually ask for birthday presents, but those who want to give you birthday presents, the Rebbe spoke about Limud Torah. That was one of the key things, an increase in learning. And when it came to the Rebbe's 70th birthday, that was definitely, certainly for the Bachrim, 100%, that was the big koch. Then learning, increasing learning in this first shiva and in the second numbers of 70. But as Niftzayim, whatever it is, we have to think to ourselves, it takes a time about this is the birthday of the Rebbe. It's a time that we think about that here, the Rebbe's Mazoli Geiger, that whatever he's helping us, our Nefesh HaKolis, our Yeshivah Shule, there's something special going on that we should connect, and we should improve. And we should do something that we should lift ourselves a little bit higher. But it's more than that. Alef Nissan, we have many dates. We have several dates that connect with the Rebbe. Alef Nissan is a date that falls out in the month of Nissan, amongst the Nissim. Don't forget the Nasi, right? We're saying already for 2 weeks already. Don't forget the Nasi. It's coming Alef Nissan. Don't forget the Nasi. And it's before Pesach. What's the idea of Nissan? What's the idea of Nissim? What's the idea of Pesach? This we spoke about already. It's Mancher Seinu. The Rebbe speaks about the idea of what's Pesach, Mancher Seinu. It's the idea of lifting ourselves out of our restrictions. It's taking ourselves, not allowing ourselves to be held down from the level that we should be striving to. If we're holding somewhere by yesterday's avodah, and not today's avodah, then that's not good enough. Lifting ourselves higher. There's a sikh where the Rebbe says there's Mancher Seinu, then there's Pesach. What's Pesach? Pesach is dilug. Pesach is skipping. Pesach is going beyond. Pesach is taking ourselves a step higher and feeling ourselves a little bit above the world. Well, you ask the women, they won't say that about Pesach. We're Farbrengen with men over here. It's not about restrictions. Pesach's a time of lifting ourselves higher, experiencing higher. What's Nissan? Nissan is Nissan Nissan. Nissan is a time of miracles. This is a time of L'mayla Teva. We have Pesach, we have all the miracles, we have so many things that happen during Nissan that we're above nature. Nissan reminds us of going beyond nature. And that's what a Nissim is also. A Nissim is something that lifts ourselves to our Yeshivah, to our highest level of ourselves. We mention Nissim every day, and the Rebbe asks, what's the connection with this? Is it a one-time off occurrence? Why are we mentioning it so every single day, every single year? What's the connection? The idea of the Nasi there is eternal. What a Nasi gives us, what a Nasi provides, these leaders, what we get, that picks us up to an extremely high level, and that's permanent, and that's higher. Well, before Pesach, it's not really, the Bachrim is not so much Bachrim in town. I'm used to being with the Bachrim around. But as a younger man in Balabatim, sometimes it's not as easy as it is for Bachrim. Bachrim are Bachlal, very high people. They've got no dagas, and they can just sit and bask in the glory of the Rebbe 24/7, learning Siddhas, learning Gemara, learning Maimar. What are they doing with time? They're busy. That's what they like. For somebody who's not involved in that life, sometimes life can get a little bit on top of you. It's coming before Alef Nissan. What's Alef Nissan? It's 3 days before Pesach. 4 days before Pesach. You're busy at home. You have to help with the kids. You have to help with the cleaning. You're still working. It's very difficult. When you come to the Alef Nissan, you know, oh, it's a special day. You shut yourself out of the house for a couple of hours to come to the Farbrengen because we have the Rebbe. But the Rebbe's attitude was completely different. And the Rebbe picks us up higher, and we're coming here to Alef Nissan, we have to feel a completely different attitude. We have to take inspiration from the Rebbe Alef Nissan and look at it completely different. We have to look at what the Rebbe is saying, what's the Alef Nissan? Alef Nissan is the time to go higher and to break ourselves out of these shackles of the boundaries of the droll of day-to-day life, of the difficulties of day-to-day life, and say, you know what, I'm a Yid. I'm a Nefesh Elokis, and a Nefesh Elokis strives higher. I'm not bound by what's going on my day-to-day life. A Yid never was bound by the rules of nature. That's Pshat a Yid. If we would go with nature, the Yiddish nation wouldn't exist today. A Yid knows that it's beyond nature, and he goes higher than that. And comes to Alef Nissan, before Pesach, and listen, our experiences, you know what? We can leave behind all that and pick ourselves up with Tefach Chaim. There was one story, Rabbi Farbrengen in Estiego. His son was here on Shulchan, I don't know if he was ever here. But Rabbi Farbrengen once was at a stage that he was working on starting a school for the new year. And obviously to start a school, there's a lot of details involved, enrolling children, finding teachers, getting finances, and his final decision that it's worth going ahead was made pretty late, pretty close to the new school year. And he was working very hard. He knew it was a big step, it was a big jump. There's a lot to get done, but he was, you know what, he's pushing, he's going to get a school happening by the next year. And then some of his Balabatim came to him and told him, or whoever, you know, by the way, you can get everything arranged, but there's one obstacle that you're not going to get arranged, so don't even bother, it's impossible. And that is, you need a building permit. I was never involved in building permits, I don't know how hard they have to get. They said that a building permit takes months to get, and that's something that you can forget everything else. If you don't have a permit, you can buy the building and have all the money and all the children. If you don't have a permit to use it, forget about it, you're not starting. And permits they have lots of applications for building permits. You have no chance of getting it in the next couple of weeks. By the time you want your school to start, don't even bother. Rabbi Farbrengen was the shliach of the Rebbe. And the shliach of the Rebbe doesn't look at life that way. The Rebbe's chassid doesn't look at life that way. We don't look at life that way. Yid is above nature. And Yid Am Yisrael, the Eibush took us out of Mitzrayim, took us out of Mitzrayim of Gulin, because the Yid doesn't need to look at nature. We don't have to go with that approach. So he wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and he got a brach from the Rebbe. And he went on with his plans. Why? Because we're not stuck in nature, we're not mimicked. Anyway, a little before the school year was meant to start, he knocked at the door one night, he opens it, and there's a distinguished individual over there. He says, "Can I come in?" Yeah. He says, "I'm so-and-so, and I'm in charge of the city council building committee." And he said, "I've had a few problems in my life, and I'm looking," he was a Yid, and he's looking for some blessings from God. And he said he heard that the rabbi in town was looking for a building permit. So he decided that he needs to add to his list of smusim to help himself in his life. He's come to the rabbi to help him get his building permit by the school year. And that was it. And he is not bound by nature. We're not bound. And it's hard. It's hard when we're in the day-to-day life to feel that way. Then, you know, I got my time limits. I got to still get back home. I still have some Pesach cleaning to do. We have to sometimes lift ourselves a bit higher and drop it off. And the Rebbe wanted that from us. That in everything we do, we have to pick ourselves up and say, I'm not being limited to what I feel is my capability. I can go beyond my capability. I can go. And when we do that, we're guaranteed that ever since the brachos for us that we experience unbelievable things. There's another story that from German my encounters. There's a professor, Mel Alexenberg. And this professor was born in Brooklyn and educated in YU and then in New York University. He got his doctorate from over there and he became a professor. And he wasn't brought up in Chabad, but he had a connection. His sister-in-law was a Chabad chassid and her husband was learning 770, and they encouraged him that he should go and meet there. So in Topshin Base, 1962 was the first time that he went to visit the Rebbe, and he was very inspired by the Rebbe and the Rebbe's approach on life, and it really changed his way of looking at things. And the Rebbe spoke to him about how Ruknis and Kashmis are really one, and the Rebbe spoke to him the word Chomer, the material. It contains the word Ruach in it, Rachel Tes, spiritual, but the material contains spiritual. And besides, for a professor, he was also a bit of an artist, so he said that affected his whole artwork, etc. So he was a professor, he became a professor in Columbine University, and he was living a fine life, he says. He was living a good Yiddish life. He lived near a shul. His kids got a good education in the schools. He had a good job. It was all good. And one day his daughter pipes up and says, he was brought up in a Zionist family also. She says, you know what, I think we should move there to Israel. Don't ask me. He decided he liked his daughter's idea. They're living the high life over there, but he decides he likes his daughter's idea. And he wants to move there to Israel. And they start looking to prospects into moving there to Israel. So he got an offer from Bar Ilan University. He got an offer from another big university in Eretz Yisrael. And he decided, what, I'm going from such a high prestigious position in New York, and I'm going to Bar Ilan University, it's a step down. He said, I'm not taking a step down. So he decided he wants to look for something a bit alternative. So he called up a friend who was in the education department, a fellow by the name of Alef in Eretz Yisrael. And he said, what's the exact opposite of New York? He said, what's the exact opposite of New York? We have here a town, its name is Yerucham. It's a town, it's a poor town. There's nothing there. It's all the immigrants from North Africa came there. It's the lowest in Eretz Yisrael in terms of economics, in terms of social status, in crime, highest in crime. It's the worst place in Eretz Yisrael. You want the opposite of New York? You can go there. I don't know why a place high in crime is the opposite of New York, so that's a different story. So he decides, but he wants to get a problem. He wants to ask the Rebbe what the Rebbe thinks. So he comes to the Rebbe, and he asks the Rebbe what the Rebbe thinks. The Rebbe says to him like this. He says, you can change the whole, you can be a pioneer and change the whole place. And he says, how can you do it? By building a higher institute of learning, by building a college. Building a college, I mean, this low economics town with low-class people, crime, whatever, that's whatever's idea is, how are we going to fix the town? Build a college. A bit beyond the norm. But he took the Rebbe's message, and he decided this is what he's going to do. And they went there to Israel. And again, we're talking about something, building a college in a small town didn't make any sense. But this is it. The Rebbe tells you, you've got to think a little bit out of the box. You've got to go a bit beyond our norm. He says, he came to Yerucham, and they found an apartment, their first apartment that they stayed in didn't have electricity before. And the first Shabbos he was there, he went for a walk around town, and he sees over there, towards the south side of the town, there's this huge, magnificent new building that looks like a school, and he goes and checks it out, and it looks pretty empty. The next day he goes over to the mayor of the city, and he says to the mayor, I see this building over there, what is it? He says, that's one of the Department of Education blunders of bureaucrats. He said they decided they're going to spend a whole millions of dollars of funding to build a special needs school in Yerucham. The problem is that in our whole community we only have 5 special needs kids. A bit different from today's educational approach, but we only have 5 special needs kids. So they get bused to a special needs school in the nearby Dimon. So we have this empty school doing that. So Professor Alexenberg says, all right, I spoke to the Love Jerome before coming here, and he told me I should build a college. I want the building. So the mayor says, you want the building? He called up the next office to the building manager, the committee manager on the building. Come here, we've got somebody who wants to take the building. And he runs in, he slams the key to them down, it's all yours. So that's it. He's in Yerucham for 2 days, he's got a building there. Anyway, the mayor is talking to him, he says, I want to tell you something. We have now, in the next couple of days, we have a delegation coming from a city in Montreal. We have a sister city relationship over here, and they're coming to us. We're the sister city. And I tell you, I don't speak English. Maybe I see you speak English. Maybe you can help me out. Sure, no problem. So the delegation from Montreal comes a couple of days later, And he's helping the mayor, and he tells them, and he says, by the way, you know, I'm here, the reason I'm here, because Lubavitcher Rebbe said that I should build a college over here in Yerucham, but we need some funding. When we build a college, it'll attract, the whole point that Rebbe said, it'll attract high class, you know, it'll attract people who make it like a college town, it'll lift the whole demographics of the town, being a college town, different types of people, and it'll lift the entire town. And the delegate in Montreal says, wow, we love your idea. Funding covered. That's it. He's in Yerucham for 4 days, and he's got a building, and he's got the funding. The only hurdle left, which is a major hurdle in itself, and that is to get education accreditation. So he calls up the contact that he has. His name, I've forgotten the first name, Tuvi, maybe Bar Ilan, who was the son of the person Bar Ilan named the university named after, who was the chief of Bar Ilan at the time. And he tells him, well, I need you to help me. How am I going to get accreditation for this college that I'm starting? I need you to show me the ropes. So he says to him, listen over here. I like to think about Bar Ilan, and I like to say that we spread over the entire Eretz Yisrael, north, east, west, and south. We have a branch up in the north in Sfas. We have a branch in the east in Ashkelon. We have a branch in the west in Ashkelon. We have a branch in the east, somewhere on the Kinneret. We don't have a branch yet on the south. I think you're going to be our branch in the south. So that's it. We have accreditation for you. Tell me what courses you're looking for, and you'll be our branch at Bar Ilan University down in the south. And that's it, he says. In 6 days, he's got a college all ready to go. He's got accreditation, funding, the building, and he said within a few months they started with 400 students. So think about it. What Meshugana is going to go to some poor mountain town in the middle of nowhere and build a college? The Rebbe wants us to go beyond our norm. The Rebbe wants us to think a little bit higher than our limitations of what we think of ourselves. This, I was going to mention, this Farbrengen, 1 year, get the Rebbe Farbrengen every year, listen from Tavshin Lamed to Memheim. There was 1 year, I don't remember which year it was, the Rebbe Farbrengen 3 nights in a row before, what? Memalov. Huh? Memalov, the Rebbe Farbrengen 3 nights in a row before Pesach. Motzi Yudalef will cover Yudalef Nissan, early Yudgilnis is the Tzemach Tzedek, Jeremy Lula. And then early Yudal is for the Rambam. Early Yudal is basically 1, 2. So 3 nights, you know, think the balabastas need their husbands help at home. And what's the Rebbe Shitza? We're Farbrengen. That's it. We're going a little bit beyond the norm. And that's what it is. That's what Yudal is accountable for Pesach and tells you we're going to break the boundaries. We're going to be put together, we're going to be Pesach or Pesach, we're going to break afterward. L'chaim, we mentioned that we finished Sefer Avodah, and we're starting Sefer Karbonos, so there should be an end. The Avodah that I've said before, the end of the Avodah Sabir, at the end of all that, we should have to break through all the boundaries and start to bring Karbonos, Sefer Yamam, Nissan, the question that we have to ask ourselves is in what is this kentik, in what way is it recognizable? In what way can you see that where the Rebbe's sitting, that we're caught the Rebbe's in Yonim, that we're trying to be miskasher to the Rebbe? There's a letter of the Rebbe in Toshin Ches to Shlomo Chaim. Where the Rebbe, I suppose, bemoaning the situation there to Yisrael, what's going on over there. And the Rebbe over there mentions a story of a particular younger man, and the implication over there is that it wasn't originally, again, it wasn't somebody who was from Tenki Tvimin, a chassid, Gezha, Midgezha, Chassidin. And the Rebbe says that this particular younger man knew about the Friedrich Rebbe, knows the Friedrich Rebbe, and then he went away to a certain country where he was living. And the Rebbe says that after that younger man went to this particular country, letters started arriving from that country to the Friedrich Rebbe. What does that mean? The letters would ask questions like Shilas in business, Shilas in parnasa, Shilas in health, whatever it is. All sorts of questions that they were asking the Friedrich Rebbe. And why is that, the Rebbe says? Because this younger man knew that when you have a question, when you have a shayla, when you have a problem, he knew that there's one address to turn to. And automatically, when he went to this other country, everybody he met, what did he tell them? By the way, when you have a problem, you know you have an address to turn to. And the Rebbe says, this is a younger man, a poshta younger man who went to another country. And we're talking about a group of Chassidim, of Elter Chassidim, people who is Chanech and Tenke Chassidim. The Shaila is, do we know that there's an address to turn to? There's only one address to turn to, and do we spread that out? Do we let people know? Do we let everybody else know? Is it recognized on us that we know that there's an address to turn to? And I'm saying that it's not only about an address to turn to, but is it recognizable on me that I am a chassid of the Rebbe? When I look at myself, and when I go out on the street, and people look at me and say, oh, there goes the Rebbe's chassid. You know, look, Chassidim always sing, Ashreinu Matei Tokenu Shonach Chassidim, Shonach Chassidim Chabad, Shonach Chassidim Rebbe. In what way is it recognizable on me that I'm a chassid of the Rebbe? Do I look like what a chassid of the Rebbe has to look like? Am I koching in the Rebbe's in Yonah? Do you look at me and you hear me speaking about Yonah Gul Mashiach all the time? Because that's what the Rebbe kocht in already from day one, unfortunately, but certainly in Toshin Alef and base. Do you look at me and see that I have to be koching and learning and going on mitzvah and helping other Yidden and bringing the character to Yiddishkeit? Do you look at me and you see that everything about me, I'm participating in Farbrengen, I'm doing whatever I can to show and to express and feel that I'm a chassid of the Rebbe? Especially comes to Alef Nissan, one thing that is a Rebbe's chassid, we should kochen, is the Rebbe's kapitel. There was a certain time when I was a bacher, and I came to Alef Nissan, and I had a shayla with myself, Skatayani Mazkir, about kochen in the Rebbe's kapitel, these new nigudim that they make up, you know, like, who says we don't have the Rebbe's askom on this particular thing, and who knows? And I was in 770, paying for Alef Nissan, Nissan. And there were, Baruch Hashem, a lot of Farbrengen going on in 770 that you can choose from, and I was going to Farbrengen, and I found the Farbrengen going on in the sukkah, upstairs, everywhere else was packed. And Rabbi Wagner from Toronto was Farbrengen over there, very geschmack of Farbrengen for a couple of hours about Anon Osif Malka, we choose the king, Farbrengen about that, and the Rebbe also. Anon Osif Malka, we have to go for gold, we have to go for the Rebbe. At any rate, so Velvel Lipsker, who was Shliach from YG, then later on came Mashpi in Miami. He happened to sit down over there. And Rabbi Wagner offered him, no Zogavar, say something. So Velvu started speaking about the Rebbe's Kapitel Yud. He started Farbrengen about how the Rebbe himself would koch in this nigger. When the Rebbe would come here off this, and there would be the group that however would chosen, the Rebbe would encourage it. And from then on, every Farbrengen of that year, how would they start? What was the nigger they would start? Was the Rebbe's Kapitel, the nigger of the Rebbe's Kapitel. And the following Rebbe's letters with Tom Foley, my Mara, the Rebbe mentioned the ideas of the Kapitel, and Farbrengen for your base Tammuz, or even sometimes for Chav Cheshvan, the Rebbe mentioned the Kapitel of the Rebbein, the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab. So the Rebbe definitely, unquestionably, was koching in the Kapitel of that year. And therefore, Velvus Farbrengen, it doesn't matter what the niggin is, that's irrelevant. The point is that we're koching in the Rebbe's Kapitel. So comes this year, Kapitel Kuf Yud Zayin, and we have an unbelievably Geshnaka Kapitel. Number one, we already have a niggin, an old niggin that's already in the Chayach on this. So we already have a niggin that we can koch in if you don't want any news. We have, it's a two-pasuk Kapitel with my Morim on it, being medayik on every word. So Mamash Geshnaka here, it's koch in the Rebbe's Kapitel. The first things first, if there's anybody who doesn't say the Rebbe's Kapitel every day after davening, as is minhag by Chassidim, this is a good year to start. It's a good year to start. It's only 2 psukim. It's not a very difficult approach to say. All right, for 2 years, don't worry about it. You'll be much with now. Start saying for 2 years, but certainly for this year, for those who don't say, should we just take on that? That was the koch the Rebbe's Kapitel to say. It's 2 psukim. You can say it mamash in 5 seconds after davening. Bal peh. We're talking about how a person has to see himself, has to be expressed, has to be seen, you have to show yourself, and how people have to look at you and see, there goes a chassid of the Rebbe. So what's the Kapitel? Hallelu es Hashem kol goyim, shavchu kol ha'urim, ki gover aleinu chastoi, and then the rest. And in my Marim, the Rebbe brings us numerous Marim of the Rebbe, based on all the Marim. The Rebbe asks, brings us a question. The Gemara Psachim already asks, speaks about Hallelu es Hashem kol goyim, the goyim are praising the Eibishter, and the Gemara speaks about what the pasuk adds, ki gover aleinu chastoi. The goyim are praising the Yidden, praising the Eibishter, ki gover aleinu chastoi, because Hashem's kindness is overpowered over the Yidden. And Rashi and Rashbam and the Gemara, the Rebbe brings this in the mind of Alef. They discuss what exactly is the praise of the Goyim. And Rashi says that what's the praise of the Goyim, why they praise him. Pashut is that if you read the pasuk literally, Ki gover aleinu chastoi, because there's such great kindness to us. Why should a Goy praise the Eibishter for what's happening to the Yidden? So Rashi thought over there is because the miracles, the greatness of the Yid that the Eibishter is showering upon him is so great that it brings a Goy to recognize that there's an Eibishter in the world. They look at what the Eibishter is doing for Yidden and they say, wow, look at the great Eibishter. There's a point last year, it was 50 years, we're still after 50 years, for example, from the 6-Day War. That's the greatest example of the Eibishter doing unbelievable miracles for the Yidden. And we find that the whole world is dispelled and looks at unbelievable events and how great the Eibishter is for the miracles he's doing for the Yidden. And that touches the apostle, by the way, that it's a reference to Mashiach signs, and Mashiach is going to see how great the Eibishter is doing for the Yidden. But then there's the Rashbam, and he says, no, why would the Goyim praise the Eibishter for what's happening to the Yidden? So he says there are 2 separate psukim. Goyim, thank the Eibishter for the kindness that he gives you. He's giving you great, he's giving you Goyim, he's giving you the world blessings, unbelievable blessings, and for that the Goyim have to praise the Eibishter. And if the Goyim have to praise the Eibishter, the blessings that he has to give us, Kol Shekein Kal V'Chomer, how much more so a Yid, when we look at the kindness and the greatness of the Eibishter helps us, how much more so we praise the Eibishter. So the Rashi, last week's parasha is Carbon Toida, And Rashi says, when do we bring the carbon Torah? When do we bring carbon for thanking the Eibishter? He brings only in the specific 4 miracles, crossing the sea, the desert, jail, and getting sick. And the Rebbe asks the question on the Rashi, says, how does Rashi know in simple times to the apostle that it doesn't mean you're bringing a carbon to thank the Eibishter? And the Rebbe says, very simple. Because it doesn't make sense. If we have to bring a carbon every time we want to thank the Eibishter, we'd be bringing several carbonas every single day. We say, I'll listen, we say, we're praying the Eibishter at least 3 times a day for all the miracles that He's doing for us. So the thanks to the Eibishter is ständig, is constant. 24/7 we need to be thanking the Eibishter. So ours, Shem Goldblum, the Goyim also have to thank the Eibishter. The Choshech, the Yid, has to feel gratitude towards the Eibishter. And there's lessons, unbelievable lessons that we can take out of that, the concept of gratitude, the concept of thanks, thanking the Eibishter, and thankfulness. But in the Maimer, there's a couple of unbelievable things I just want to bring out. One point. In the Maimer, he associates this idea, why are the Goyim praising us? How was Hashem called Goyim? Because of the kindness the Eibishter is doing for us. He says that's because we were able to, through our avodah of what we did, we could elevate our surroundings, we could elevate our environment, and we bring the nations of the world to recognition that they should recognize that they should thank the Eibishter for the kindness that He did for us. We have the ability to affect all of those around us, even a non-Jew, that they should praise the Eibishter and realize the truth of the greatness of Egypt. And if you don't listen to Rebbe's, major Farbrengen Rebbe in the later years, definitely spoke about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Nev, the effect that we can have on the nations of the world, we can transform the world, how we can elevate the world. And as Ki Gover Aleinu Chastoi, the Goyim will come to praise the Eibishter because of what's going on in Yid's Avodah. And the Rebbe brings there, it's Gimel Tishrei, the Rebbe Marash's yard side, the Rebbe brings a famous story. The Rebbe Marash once on a journey, and he came to a town, and as he came, all the peasants of the town came and they started bowing down to the Rebbe Marash, and they offered him salt and bread. And the Rebbe Marash was with somebody, one of his brothers, and they asked him, how are you talking? What's going on here? They're bowing down to you. And the Rebbe Marash turned back and he said, no, about who does it say that Baruch Tiyeh Mikol Ha'adim? If not, it says that a Jew will be blessed by all the nations. This is an expression that this is what really has to be. A Yid has the ability to show himself to the extent that the nations of the world look and say, oh, how great is the Yid, Baruch Hashem, how good is Hashem called Goyim. And if that's that way in terms of all the nations, if it's that way in terms of the Yid, to the Goyim, when it's talking about a facet of the Rebbe, that we're coming and we're expressing ourselves, and we walk down the street and we know with pride that we're a citizen of the Rebbe, and we express that to ourselves, and we feel that and we act that way, everybody around us automatically should be inspired, should see and realize that here goes a facet of the Rebbe, here goes somebody who's pushed the Rebbe, and they feel, oh, Baruch Tiyeh Mikol Ha'adim, they feel that they should bless you, and they bless the Rebbe, and they feel the greatness of the Rebbe. L'chaim, we should be sitting with Yeshivah Shule, we should express that, and we should bring others to express it. Hallelujah, Hashem Goldblum, and others should be able to express the greatness of the Rebbe through us, through our anhaga, that we feel and act and express ourselves 24/7 in the way of the Rebbe. Thank
If you think Ritzias is that it's been garnished and I from Eikver, so what can I do? How can I accomplish? Who am I? I go, and the guy comes in and put he told me go and do it. I read his battle. You can't be in his battle. What's the first halach in Shulchan Aruch every so many times? That Halevish. Emerson product. We know that it was Moshe so many times. That the Har Sinai is Machim Kotarai, is the lowest of all the mountains. And therefore the Torah is given upon Har Sinai because they have to have it, they have to accept, to be receptive, you have to be humble. Because you know better than why you can be receptive. But the other question is a bit of the question that famously asks. So why is it then that why did they actually give it on the lowest mountain? Give it on in a valley, the lowest place. Right now, I've been saying it because the lowest place on earth is 100 feet. We don't see level. He gave us the place to go. That's the lowest place to go. Why did we play it in the lowest place? Because that in order to be kind and to accept and to tackle before he says the Mekayim told the Torah things, but they have to express. They have to have kibbutz. We know that Dafka on Shavuos, when the Torah was given, that Dafka is the only day when they brought the outcomes left in poets. To be a Yid, to become a Torah, you have to have kibbutz. You have to have a sense of self. There was a chassid down in Rebbe called Admor. He was a chassid he lived in went to Petrograd, when he went out of prison the first time. So we know Sandra was downstairs, the hospital upstairs, and if I remember correctly from my fellow safer, I think he said this, those were the only two Jews who had permits to be in Petrograd, in the capital city. So this Mark and Leffler, it's not much sin in his Oifen of Hashem, was an Oifen by deep by Lima B'nai Hashem. He was Oifen Hashem, he felt a sense of self, a sense of importance. What kind of sense of importance? He said, he used to say, and there was this yogish and things that were not good, and he used to say to himself, I'm a chassid of the biggest Rebbe in the world. I'm a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. I'm going to do something wrong. How can I do that? I'm a chassid of the biggest. So that's the thing of my deep way. So you know this in. So the movement of Pashat, that's the ayin is an important thing. Sorry, the ayin is an important thing. Is an important thing. But what I find incredible about this juxtaposition of Yidal Nissan and me and ayin is that may use out of Nissan we get that may ayin and may ani have to both be in the right way, the right path, in the right manner. You cannot be. I received an answer that recently, and it was an answer where I had to stand up with strength. That's what happened here. And I opened up with this. I did not before opening it. We don't know before. So I opened up with this, asked them the Shiloh. So never wrote this following. Even though the clock, we know that a person has to have both sides. It's Alef, but the person has to know his faults. It's a chain, he has to also know and I'll preface it by saying, he doesn't have to know his garnished. It's the Rashishi, the Afamishi, the Arabi, it was a garnish, not the rest of the garnish. That's not the rest of the jargon at all. I don't believe that ever. I don't believe. It's impossible. That's not true. I've never said this. Never went like that at all. So, when the Rebbe said, so therefore when the priest did not have to start with caution, the very simple. You know where you stand, you know where you can go. So surely you have to do the same. And we know what the Alter Rebbe said, that of course that is called to Rebbe Rashab. That Kishen should tzarech das chesroin esatzvoi kach tzarech das malach. Just as much, because you have to know your chesroin, so just as much as my mind. So that's clearly having a both. The Rebbe says in the letter, however, Yeshloimar, that when it comes to be mashpia on others, it's more important even than knowing Chesroinus Atzmai to know Miles Atzmai. And again, in order to be mashpia on another person, you have to know your limitations. You can't be mashpia on another person if you're arrogant. It's shut it. Why would a person want to listen to you if you're about yourself? Why would they want to be? People respect the emes in you. If you have emes and you share emes, that they love that. They love the emes. That's what they want. Everybody wants emes. At the host emes, you'll be able to give it. If you have emes, you'll be able to give it. How many times did I tell you to try to ask? Well, because if you don't have it, you give someone else. So he wants your emes. So you have to know if you have to know your fault. And yet says the Rebbe, you have to know why. It's like the word, the uftu of the Rebbe, one of the most incredible chidushim of the Rebbe, was l'chayda two things: the yamin and the shiluk of the ayin and the yamin. Maybe I know. The Metzias, how many times, and I have to confess, I'm going to say words that I heard from my guys in the men, and they went right over my head. Eben Melech, you are Metzias of the Melech yourself because you're the Evelyn. An inordinate amount of oisies were spilled, so to speak. Remember, we were walking in Yeshivah with an old chassid, and I'll tell you, the old chassid was Rabbi Chaim Reikla. So he made the point, the same point. He said, the lav dafke bittul is bittul, and lav dafke gaiva is gaiva. So that, you can say that the bittul sometimes comes in the lavush of gaiva, of strength, and vice versa. He gave an example. he said when you go, he said he told the story of the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe had, Shlomo Karlin used to come to the Alter Rebbe's territory. The Alter Rebbe do it that they split the entire Europe to have different domains, different areas, and everyone was the head of the place. Everyone was the Lashon, everyone was the Tzaddik, the Rebbe who that from that spot. Except Rav Shem Karlin was from Karlin. Karlin was part of Lita. The Alter Rebbe was given Lita and Reisen, Lita and White Russia, Lithuania and White Russia, which was the batch of the starting of the Alter Rebbe. Only the Alter Rebbe could have done it. And so Rav Shem Karlin was from right there. So we took over Karlin sometimes, I don't know. Who was there young in the times of the Magi, who was there 32. But so Rav used to come around. So there are a number of mitzvahs that Friedrich gave us about one famous story that he told him, Pan to Pan, then your mind, Floppus to Floppus, and your Pan, that the Chassid was brazen in the second of Shem Karliner, the master whom Rav Shem Karliner wanted as a Chassid, because he wanted the Alter Chassidim as a Chassidim. So he said to him, the master is a master, but he's not mine. And the servant is a servant, but he's not yours. So here, Chaim told us a story that two Yungalites went to Rav Shem Karliner because he was in town, and he was about to express expression. He was about to remain in this town with the Yungalite, go here with the Yungalite, and he wanted him to Chassidim. And these two Yungalites walked over to Rav Shem Karliner, and they said to him, the ganze derech Eretz, aber der Stadt allein zu Rebbe. The city belongs to the Alter Rebbe. Anyone that knows a hard bit of Rav Shem Karliner understands that that was a safe trip directly to the other world. Rav Shem Karliner said a few words, and the Alter Rebbe had to deal with Rav Moshe and the son. It's not the point of time to tell the story. Rav Shem Karliner wants to curse the Alter Rebbe, and he put language on the Mikla Rebbe. And there was Rav Shem Karliner is called, is a term used, is Tefach Me'al Ha'aretz, which the Friedman explains in the Sikh, or Ha'aretz Sikh of Rishima, means it's from Yisoid to Atzilus. And in the Shama Atzilus is Godhead. So when they went, this is what they said from Shem Karliner. You think Rav Shem Karliner would be offended. When they left, Rav Shem Karliner said, in my Lebanon, zwei Yungalites, Tadifu Bittul. I've never seen such bittul. Bittul? Sure, bittul. Chutzpah? Yeah, the lavush was chutzpah, but the bittul, the lavush, it was enclosed in a garment of strength, but they partially put themselves on the side. And the man has on the side of bittul. It's not that when you have bittul and bittul looks like bittul could be something else. And the converse, Rebbe Chaim told us, about the time. And he's afraid to walk over to someone because he's so afraid. He's shy, he's afraid, or he's afraid. What's he going to say to me? He said, it seems like shy, but it's really yeshus, because he put himself before the others. So you have both in your From Rebbe, you saw a Dor Chodesh. By the Rebbe Bechlal is the Malchus. We're Chassidim of the Rebbe. What does it mean the Rebbe was Malchus? Whoever saw the Rebbe felt Malchus, okay. It's not Rav Poshet. Strength, unbelievable strength. One of many, a million things we can say. Lazy Karasik was in touching you, in the first summer touching you. Lazy Karasik was one of the Rav of Anash, but he was in, came to the Rebbe. He wrote back to Eretz Yisrael. This is a different story altogether. They threatened to envy, being into money, they're attached to him like bees to honey. The Rebbe's strength, feet, like I said about the Rebbe, a day of Taktifa, a day of Chazok, and a day of Yishon. So the Rebbe's strength, unreal. And yet, that's not the Oitzim of the Malchus from Rebbe. The Oitzim of the Malchus from Rebbe is, there's a Yid called, there was a famous Chassid, the Shtei called Zalman Posner. Zalman Posner wrote a book called Think. Yeah, speak English, but think Jewish. So he has an article there, he asks, why do people ask all the time, why do we idolize the Rebbe? says, that's very easy. The bigger question is, why does he idolize us? What does the Rebbe see in me? What does the Rebbe see in you? What does the Rebbe see in us? And the Rebbe looks at you as a Melech. The Rebbe sees every Yid as a Ben, what's it, a Ben Melech? As a chelik built in Nifra to the Eberstein. The Rebbe wants, what the strength of the Rebbe? There's a Yid called Rabbi Shane, the Moylan, his Shver, I believe, had a store.
Yeah.
Is it Scheinberg's?
The Judaism store.
Yeah, no question about Shishitsky, okay? Really? Okay, I knew the story, okay, that's nice. So, Mr. Rabbi, they have a store there where the mikveh was there. So, this is in Union.
Now we got a store where the earpro guy is. Next door to Fishbowl. And one side is a barber, the other side
Right.
is
So here was the, no, I'm talking about a slaughter store, different thing. As far as Al Capone, there was a time when the slaughter store of Shane was right across the street from Yeshivah now. I remember when I was a kid. And there was a different one else. The park of Shane had a store there. Right? And before that it was Shane Shver, but I can't remember. So that he would stand there and the Rebbe would sometimes pass by, walk by. And the Rebbe, and there was a store before that, and he walks by, good morning, Rabbi. And the Rebbe said, good morning, sir. And the Rebbe said, and then he had a psak favorite. Because the Rebbe walked by him, shot with the cup. He didn't nod with his head. But he didn't, So he said, the Baba Shereb, he used to be called Baba Shereb, he says, this is the way to go like this, and me only went down to it. The Rebbe said, in my 11, Publicizing is gebeugen Farbrengen. Not once in my life. Famous story of the Rebbe, he's on a train, his mother standing there, and the Rebbe puts on tefillin, and his mother says, I can't explain it. But the goyim, a bunch of big bulayim, big chavra, surrounded Rebbe and protected Rebbe. He said, no idea why. The Rebbe gave them Melech. That's posh, as you always saw. There was a Yid, whoever I don't remember, Samuel Shin from Russia, the late Memphis. Even Leningrad was a leader in the Jewish community there. And we had Farbrengen by him, this was happy with But he had Farbrengen by him, he was very miscareful about it, but he always felt this. One day, I sent him one, no, yeah, he went. So someone said, he was so violent, he loved to see this, but we didn't know why he wasn't why he didn't sort of stick. He came, my friend Yeshivah says to me, Yeshivah Shule is here. Yeshivah Shule is here. He walks into 770, and he's there by Shabbos, and the Rebbe walks in. He turns to my friend Yeshivah and he says, I'm a husband. I didn't believe it's Shayach, the adulation they had on the Rebbe. And it was Shayach. He walked in. The Rebbe's mouth is the Rebbe's mouth. But the Rebbe taught us, as jeder Lied is a Melech. The Rebbe was asked, what's your Yeshivah? What's your, that was a touching sign. It's written in the Sefer, it's a penalty of word, I don't say where it's written. It's written in the Sefer, there's a black Sefer, Sefer from Mashiach, Shafish Peiches is touching you. There's a picture on the front. Small black Sefer. And they asked, so someone touching that, someone asked them, what's your Yeshivah? So what is your aspiration? Tafshin Zayin, there was 3 years to get, another 3 years to become better. What's your aspiration? Rebbe said, Bus is dort 2 Yiden, soll sein an der Yeshivah Shule. Let's get going. That's what we're doing. 2 Jews is a Olam Moed Bam Rebbe Kipshuta. 100 Jews is 100 Olam Moed Bam Rebbe Kipshuta. So the very Yeshivah will be able to tell us why 2, not 1. Because it's possible, or whatever the reason, it's not whatever the reason, I'm sure there's not a home there. What's that? How the bottom of the Kudah is that Yeder Eid is a melech. That you go on American Shlichus to Aubrey Badanga for 10 Yidden, what 10 Yidden? For 2 Jews. I asked someone today, he went to Aubrey Badanga last year, he told me that there was one family, boom, they're next to a Jewish family, okay? And then another someone else came in. And probably that was a miracle. Now, in normal, in business terms, if you open the business for 2 people, it wouldn't work. But this is not, here you're talking on the shows. Why? Because when you're talking about a melech, in other words, the Rebbe teaches you as Yeder Eid is a melech. This Nekudah, stop, even Amol Gezeiten, I don't know, what are the Yosis? This Yosis, Tashin, Tashin Mem, Tashin Vav, all of them, all the things, all the brachas, or, that are higher than all fantastic brachas. That means what is shine for the Rebbe. Your whole Avodas Hashem is a different Avodas Hashem than it was once. Amol, the Avodas Hashem was, I didn't reach it yet, I'm not good enough, I have to get better. The way the Rebbe's Avodas Hashem is, a sense, you're a chassid, you're a walking miracle, you're a good to my age. What? That's if you're a Rebbe, when he builds you up. Was a nice that's on there, but there was read the English. We started putting a tune. Wow! I just heard a story from Rabbi Gilgal Linder just a moment ago. I think the mice was told me, most of the mice was told. As a reminder, I didn't even tell the story. A little boy writes to the Rebbe. This is the Chal, it's universal. We always have the same question. Does the Rebbe need big things or small things? The Rebbetzin was asked, someone told the Rebbetzin something about being only a hope that we can give you nachas. The Rebbetzin said, I don't know the Russian. Unser nachas is as Ivar nachas. You have nachas, that's our nachas. That's the Rebbetzin. That's not, that's our nachas. So do we talk, I'm saying, take 2 mice, two simple stories. I believe it maybe was when he was here in Shlichus. But I labeled all the time, learned about that. Looking about assumption, his brother was behind the test. So, he learned about Black Mother Bahar. Did I ever heard about it? They're aufgestanden, auf die Spiders. How do you talk about it? I played the guy. I don't know if every time the guy went to the door that I put on film and he gives it. A little boy writes a letter to the Rebbe. My sister Rebbe was talking a lot about brachas, the Siddur, something like that. The Rebbe's mother once said, the Rebbe's garden, Azag Gagdus und ungekommen Azag Pagdus. Guy walks by the Rebbe. A guy, a woman, I don't know. Yeah, partially, I think I know a man. Partially, you can make up partially in the Rebbe says, all right. But so a kid walks by the Rebbe. A kid was by the Rebbe. So a kid writes to the Rebbe. Rebbe, I heard that you talking to the Siddur about saying the brachas. I used to say on the bus, I used to say on the way to school, with Yeshivah. Now I'm saying the brachas. The Siddur in the house properly before I do. Rebbe answered, Happy Nissan, Kemayim Karim, Al Nefesh Hayef. You revived my soul. You revived me, literally, you revived me like cold water. I don't want to say tired soul. On a hard, on a weird hanging, on a weary soul. You revived me like a weary soul, an tired soul. Ein Kind, like you should them Rebbe, I said, Chaim Good came to the Rebbe years ago. He told the story that he came to the Rebbe was down. Maybe you could say Rebbe's London. The Rebbe was down, whatever things were going on, were not going to go very good, whatever it was, and he told the Rebbe that he was in Sydney then. He told the Rebbe that in Sydney they had a Jewish community meeting. And he and Rabbi Abramson was there, I believe. And Pastor Bob Shiro was based in Sydney and was there was strong. He, what do you call it? He was a time stepfather-in-law. Stepfather, yeah. And so he tells the Rebbe that there was a Bundist, a Yiddishist, a Bundist, who completely is not very excited about the Torah, put it mildly, and multiply that by a plenty. And he said to the Rebbe that this guy got up and he said that we thought we ran away from the old ways, from the old country, and we left it behind, and Baruch Hashem got rid of them, and the old Jew is gone, and the new Jew is here, and I looked this up. Until these two Jews came along, these two guys came along, and that's enough for all of us. The Rebbe smiled, I'm saying, but look at the difference of the mice. One mice is a mice that a stot, in Yisrael has a presence of a Yid, of a Chassidish Yid, of a Rav. Hey, we can understand that. Ain't kin. How do you understand that? Ain't kin. What made Moshe Rabbeinu? Sheta Medrash, we heard it just in time. He ran after one sheep. I pushed the child. What it's long to push the child. I'm sitting like Robert Jones, I feel like I say that's such a so I pushed the child. He was a Rebbe for one sheep. Wie ist die Wort Rebbe for a ganze Volk? What's the connection? He's like, I'll take a sheep. Get him as a tutor. You know, they have in schools a one-on-one. Give him a one-on-one class. He cares for one soul. What's the kesher? What's the kesher? Because if you want, because everyone is an Olam Moed. And that's the way you have to look. It's just that one Yid, one time, what's the mitzvah achas? Because the whole world is touched and affected by one Yid. I'm just saying, I don't understand this. Kemayim Padin al Nefesh Hayef. That the Rebbe is a Nefesh Hayef was not hard to understand. And that the Rebbe needs Mayim Padin Hayef is not hard to understand. What is the Shine is, what does the Rebbe see in us? What the Rebbe sees in us, the Rebbe sees us, the way we could be, and the way we did into the mind. So what's the key? The key, however, is that in other words, the Rebbe sees that you have to know your ani. You have to know, but it has to start from ani. You can't have the Rebbe cooked up by Yiddish. The Rebbe doesn't want to anyway, this is not modern day psychology, you're great, you're fantastic, no matter what. That's it. This is a mush. You have your mush. That you look at another Yid and you see the koyach, tension. Stam, I was telling stories of another time. It's not like you see my facility. There's a couple of Gordons here. They'll appreciate it. We had what's this idea? And I believe that the shul in this room, and no one, I hate the cloud thing. I think that's Roshel. But anyway, the shul in this room probably will second this and third this and agree with this. My model used to be a drosha or a sikh. The Rebbe said that every Yid is special. I sleep with godly, I'm not a bit of a stroke, but I don't have no HaKadosh. Watch if you open your eyes to see it. Tell you one story. We have a school in Adelaide. There's a bacher that came for Shabbat year, came stories with the middle board came. Some. So he comes once, and he gets everyone's phone numbers. I can get phone numbers off anybody, if anything. And he's very much like with tefillin. Every guy he walked over to, basically the sleeve was rolled up by the time the guy realized it, and the tefillin were on. Okay, we can say no, because they're proper. Nowadays they're very proper, you don't say no. You don't say yes. You say no before it puts it on. Once you put it on, it comes up. He literally was able to put a tefillin on every year that I said. I was shocked and amazed by some Yidden who refused point blank. Except for one guy. An Israeli. In his words, I believe in science. And so it's not for me. Tefillin is not for me. And he refused point blank, and Mendel was pushing, and it was and the sleeve did not quite get as far as the tefillin, so good around. 2 years later, this guy's the president of the school. The school closes. The local tech school closes. This man had Mesiras Nefesh Mamish. A guy who doesn't believe Rahman al-Islam, and Mesiras Nefesh Mamish, that Jewish children, and 4 Jewish children have a Jewish school. Not that was for any other reason. Mamish for that. And he was tell you that it's wrong because our children, this is my heritage. I don't know. The school closes, and he ripped his poor heart out. Alone, seriously, just ripped his poor heart out. And he calls me, Rabbi Engel, we have to organize two things. I want you to help me organize. Guess what's that? I want you to help me organize. One thing I want you to help me organize. What is that? Torah classes for my children. They need to go to a Jewish school. They need to do what they do in Jewish schools. In Jewish schools, they go to Torah. We need to do Torah my kids. Okay, that's we started in Torah. We had a Torah class. Going for one. 2 weeks later, the boy comes to the Torah class. The young boy comes to Torah class. How you going? Good. So how's your Hebrew reading? It's better than ever. Why? What happened? I daven every morning. What? I daven every morning. Wow, that's beautiful. Guys, you have a beautiful boy. Fantastic. Wow. Good. I'm lost for words. I didn't exactly expect it. Oh, and my father davens with me. What? Yep, he doesn't just daven, he puts on a talis and tefillin, because he explained to me that a Jew, anyway, I spoke to the father of Yeshivah, the language friend, very good friend. Very good man. He explained to me as follows. What I do believe, he didn't say that to me. He said that very simple. A Jewish child needs Jewish education. The school of Rahman is not closed. I asked him to learn Torah to my kids. I can ask the daven before he goes to school. Because in Jewish school, you daven. For no reason. From Jewish school, you daven. Wait a minute. I can't ask my kid to daven, and I won't daven myself. I'm not a hypocrite. Wait a minute. I can't ask him to daven. He says, Yishtabach with us, but do these three things. But that's for a kid. But from a grown-up, I have to be a grown-up to my kids to equalize them. So what do you do? I ask him. Put on talis and fill. He said, also, talis and fill, whatever, I might believe so, whatever. But I need talis and fill. That's the way Jews daven. And so for a year long, after the end, the kid wasn't interested anymore. But and it has an effect. But for a year long straight, he was diving from my hand, he's asking about Nusa, what was his grandfather's Nusa, he wanted to do it right, he's hungry, he couldn't put Poland, I told him Nusa expired, whatever, I was good. He dived for a year, he could not get him to put on film, an old famous story. The Rebbe sees as I eat as a melech. And if nothing else, the least we can do for the Rebbe is as the Rebbe tut taftir al Samelech, sollst du gucken nach noch Hayiden al Samelech. The least we can do is reciprocate. There's a sure the Berlazar says Rabbi Berlazar, the Putin's chief rabbi, says that the reason ever since such is the words of Neda, this is Pasha the deep, Pasha, it's a very biblical experience. Pasha, and Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, it works wonderfully. Mitzad Echad, there's a Meister from Rebbe, very interesting Meister from Rebbe. I'm going to bring this point out. Because the Ayin has to precede the Ani. Because the Bittul has to precede the Bittul, the Machir, has to precede the Torah. Only because you know that the Eibishter is emes Hamamita, only then can you be a It's interesting, Maisa. Correct me in the Maisa, because I don't know the Maisa, but the Maisa is often as well. Famously, they never said, at one point, they never said, who wants to be rich? So everyone says, this guy, I don't know, who raised their hands? Sam Alam, what's the difference? Okay, go fine. Purim says, well, isn't it true that the Rebbe said in the Sikha before, the Rebbe Kiret HaSikha, the Rebbe was very upset, people didn't pick up their hands. 4 or 5 people, I don't know, something like that, picked up their hands. Why? The Rebbe was very upset that more didn't pick up their hands. I wondered why. Someone once told me, you don't see it before that the Rebbe said a Sikha before Posh Bevakel Gashmias. It grants him Bevakel Ben Gashmias. Gashmias is garbage. I don't know the words, but that was the thing. All right, you ready, guys? Who wants to be rich? What's going on? Wonderful. Everything at this time. Purim, Pesach, you don't talk about Pesach. I'm Purim about Pesach. Why is the Rebbe before he asks people to become rich? Tell you that this is garnish. What's the connection? The answer is it's majorly connected. If to you Gashmias is an end Chas v'Sholom on its own. And to me, if it's an end on its own, then the Gashmis is the Balabos over you. If the Gashmis is Balabos over you, then you're not going to be Balabos over the Gashmis. And if you know what a David Muvado, as the Cheshbon said that Kletsky used to make, that when the sum total was not good English, then so this is what I'm giving as a Shemayim, Ruchni, as a Gashmis equally just as much. Adarabah, the Kabbani is acting enough to others. But Oretz if Shemayim is Kadmu. Oretz if you know that there's that Ruchnius is the Yamas, and in order the Eibush Kabbana is Daf become the Matzah. When the Alter Rebbe ate the bagel and butter, he wasn't eating the bagel and butter because it tasted good. He ate the bagel and butter because it brought the Kabbana Yodena. That bagel and butter, that the bagel is a good bagel with butter. Hashem, you know, you have to say something. If you have to eat the bread and you have to eat the butter, so you have to put the bread on the butter on the bread. But I believe that's because the Rebbe told him, he asked the Rebbe, he didn't ask is it Taizus, he asked a better question. Is it moistus or Hitzarfus? That's another question. Is butter, to buy butter, is it, not waste money. Is there a wasted money or not? The Rebbe said it's Hitzarfus, it's neat. He said it wasn't. For all vegans in the crowd, the Rebbe he also asked the Rebbe if meat is moistus or Hitzarfus, and the Rebbe said it's Hitzarfus. And as one says that the Rebbe paid for years for the Thursday night meat dinner. The Rebbe paid for the Thursday night meat dinner in Rwanda. Shalom was interested. Shalom Lever was just saying before. It's not happening. Rebbe sometimes have kavanah the Thursday night. So if the Gashmi is so the Rebbe wanted the point, but the Gashmi is garnished. Of what you do, the Gashmi is gewalt. It has to, mitzad Echad, the Rebbe's in Yarm have to be what's important to us. Mitzad Shein, you're the Rebbe's man. You walk into a room, we have to have it. I'm not saying it's easy, I'm not saying I do it. I'm saying I'm demanding myself. You should. That you walk into a room, you know that everyone einem in the belt. That everyone will take over the world. Everyone said about Australia with Schönheit, Feinheit und Gutskeit can man einnehmen ganz Australien. Niceness, fineness, goodness, you can win over the whole Australia. The world will be relentless. We have to know as much to this of it. This is good. Not to belittle, but to appreciate, to know what you have, and to know, Ashton's to know as a chassid, and to know that what we have is better than everything else. And secondly, to Pashut, know who you are, know your mindless, know yourself. Memela, when you walk up to another Yid, and Zoshtem. A man once told me that he saw a Jew come to the middle of his. He said 140, this guy owned 140 buildings in Manhattan. Anyone with a quarter of a brain that knows it stands a bit of Manhattan knows that any building in Manhattan is worth $1 million. Do the maths. It was worth how many money to get out? This guy knew it. He said where he walks into a boardroom, everyone's trembling. I've never seen this, he says to me. He walked into the Yehidus, the Rebbe standing there, he was trembling. I began that line from the Rebbe's prayer. I heard a story. I once went on marriage studies. So I happened to be related to a Thai Shliach of the Rebbe, Rabbi Herschel Fogelman, one of his brothers, from Worcester, Massachusetts. And so the Yid says to me, you look like a Fogelman. I look like a Fogelman. I said, well, okay, my mother's a Fogelman. Like, your uncle, okay, let me tell you a story. I was a little boy in Buffalo, New York. I went to, Farbrengen rabbi. I went to a school that the Shliach started, your uncle or someone started before him. I forget who went to Buffalo. My uncle didn't go. He finally went, I think, Tashin Bey. So I think he went back in the beginning. And he was quoted, saying, and the head of the federation came to see him and to tell him, in the name of the entire community, every Schwarzjahr and everything between, there's no Schwarzjahr, okay, every Jew who's on his way up, not yet on his way up, and the head of the federation was a big man, 6'3", he was built like a refrigerator, he's a big boy. And he comes in, and Rabbi Fogelman is a short guy, but he was a short guy. And he walks in there and he says to him, this is how it goes in this town. We call the shots in this town. And he says, my uncle jumped on the table. And he points his finger at him. Everyone knows how to Fogelman, but I had to. I am a chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, he is the leader of the generation. What he says goes, what he says, if he says it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Let me tell you something. We're going to stay here, you're gone. Fine, we don't jump on tables all the time, but we're down. We have to remember the koyach and the maila. And the Rebbe wants you to know mailas atzmut. For another reason. Some think that if you have bittul, you're more shy to listen to have Yerushalayim. The Rebbe says otherwise. The Rebbe says if you know your maila, if you know who you are, you'll say, "What's this? Is past English." There's a very famous past English. I'm bigger than that. I'm better than that. There's no need to do a bathroom yourself in order to be I'm better. There's the famous Akhtversky says, his father was a Rebbe. He says, the biggest reprimand I ever heard from my father is, that's pastish. You're better. We're better than that. Then the Rebbe's Chassidim. We have the Chassidus. We have the emis. Such incredibly young we have. Let's push it. Oh, we got this part 2 that I'm saying. You learn that I'm a Mechitz every day, and you open a minor, you're cruising. This will help from it. We should take this Nukuda and remind every Yid that's at his Oichel. As do this Tamela, you have a first class ticket. The famous story about the guy who went under the train. We're better than that. It's better than that. The world, we are working for Velach Malcham Nacham Billy. Du bist a Shliach von Rebbe, the Shliach. Schlach dem Tisch noch mit der Eberster. The Rebbe says Mashiach is coming. It's organized. It's relaxed. Let's get it done. We should be connected to the Rebbe. We should the Rebbe's Ratzon. We should fulfill the Rebbe's Ratzon. We should know the Rebbe's Ratzon. We should fulfill the Rebbe's Ratzon. And as we do that, the commander-in-chief will lead the army to the Gula. Yeshivah Shule.